A matchup of powerhouses, dominating victories, and maybe a few upsets for good measure. We have it all right here on the Varsity 360 Gridiron Report, and it starts right now. Mark Coleman here from the Virginia Varsity Sports Network. Welcome to another episode of the Varsity 360 Gridiron Report, taking a look at the top stories in Fredericksburg area high school football. Certainly appreciate you finding us here at the Fredericksburg.com, the home of the Freelance Star. And I also appreciate the time that I get from the good folks from the Freelance Star Sports Department, including the FLS varsity team. They cover high school sports, but they cover a whole lot more than that. Today I have one of my very favorites. I tell you, if you were going to be looking at sports reporter fantasy draft, this guy has to be the number one pick. It is Mr. Taft Coghill Jr. Taft, sports reporter extraordinaire. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. Good to see you, Mark.
Busy time, postseason for other sports, so you're going to be covering some cross country, maybe a little field hockey. Yeah. Volleyball's going on as well.
Exactly. Everybody looks at FLS varsity and thinks about football all the time, but it's the postseason for some of the other sports as well, so we have to hit those right now.
Absolutely. They are equally as important, and certainly the players, coaches, and friends and family are just as eager to find out the results of that. So
exactly.
Exciting times. Hopefully the weather it's going to be sort of iffy this week, it sounds like, but such is the case for fall around the Fredericksburg area.
Yes, sir.
Well, let's talk some football. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Let's jump right into it. Very intriguing game between two 5A North powerhouses from the area, Massapequa and Mountain View. This game played at Mountain View. Taft, I know you were at this game. Ponex gets their 31st consecutive regular season victory. They come away with a 41-20 win over the Wildcats. How good is this Ponex team?
They're very good, very dominating performance in this game. Mountain View came in this game 6-1, and Massapequa took control of the game in the second half. It was close for a half, and then after a while, that triple option offense just kind of warmed down.
You've told me that you were quite impressed with the performance of Joey Benden. Joey, 14 carries, 141 yards, 2 touchdowns rushing. He also had a passing touchdown. He makes this offense run, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. I mean,
no pun intended, by the way. On that.
Yeah, Massapequa, since their inception in 1998, they've had some outstanding quarterbacks. It started out with Nat Jackson, went on to Jay Kinney, and you saw Alfonso Trice, some of these other guys. I think Joey Benden might be the best at running that offense that I've seen.
They've had some good ones, so that's saying something, but Joey Benden certainly has been performing extraordinarily well. They've got a pretty good running back there. I think just a junior, Trey Carson, who had 11 carries for 104 yards in this game. He scored once on the ground. He caught that touchdown pass from Benden. Tristan Medina also with a touchdown on the ground. They've got those weapons. That's the hallmark Ponex playbook.
Yeah, that's what's interesting about them right now. I mean, you looked at last year when they had C.J. Lewis and Bo Fields, and they were struggling to figure out who would replace those guys. But now a guy like Trey Carson is really coming into his own at the perfect time. Tristan Medina's coming to his own at the perfect time. And once you surround Joey Benden with all those weapons combined with what he's able to do, it's a lot to handle.
They have hit their stride, I believe. So they maybe struggled a little bit early in the season. They had that tough game, season opener against Courtland, but they really seem to have, they being Massapequa, really seem to have hit their stride here. Mountain View, meanwhile, they've lost 2 in a row. Not a bad performance from Mountain View, though, including their quarterback, Ahmad Tweedy. He had 17 carries for 171 yards rushing, 2 scores on the ground. He also had a touchdown pass. This is still a strong Mountain View offense and team as well.
Yeah, it's a very, very strong team. You see what Tweedy was able to do. His speed and on some of those design runs and even some of the plays that break down, he's able to create a lot with his legs, but also with his arm as well. So I think they'll be just fine. They lost 2 games against 2 highly regarded teams. So they come back this week with Stafford, and I think they're going to be just fine.
Should be just fine, I agree. But they were both 5A North losses. How does it, in the Taft Coghill Jr. crystal ball, how are the playoffs shaping up for this? I want to make any predictions, prognostications? Wild guesses?
Well, I'm not exactly.
Battle of 4A East rivals King George and Courtland. This game played at King George. Taft, very surprising. I know you were following this on Twitter, as was I, thinking that there had to be some sort of typo in this. King George, the Foxes jump out to a 19-0 lead. Courtland tries to claw back. Their comeback falls short. King George with the upset 19-14 victory over Courtland. Wow.
Yeah, I was at the Massapequa Mountain View game, and I was, like you said, following it on Twitter, and I see 6-0, okay, 13-0, 19-0. It was unbelievable. So kudos to the Foxes. I know they don't like to call it an upset, but a lot of people from the outside would call it just that.
Not too many non-King George fans would have predicted this victory, quite honestly. So congratulations to King George on this one, and congratulations to Will Clift. What a wonderful performance this young man, senior for the Foxes, had on both sides of the ball. 8 carries for 82 yards and a rushing touchdown. Defensively, he returned a fumble for a touchdown. A very versatile player. Actually played middle linebacker in this game and was basically just chasing the sweeps from sideline to sideline. 16 tackles in this game for Clift as well. I'm sure he was tired by the end of the night.
Yeah, quite a performance when you look at who he was chasing sideline to sideline. When you think about the speed and the power of Blair Lawson and Victor Green and Clift being about 5'11", about 174 pounds, and having to chase those guys and having the strength to help bring them down. I know he didn't do it all on his own, but he was a very integral part of what they were able to do defensively.
He was a very integral part, and in fact, because of that, Will Clift has been identified as the Freelance Star Player of the Week. So congratulations to Will Clift from King George High School on their victory over Courtland, but also Clift getting the Player of the Week honors. Luke Barnum for King George also had a touchdown rushing. Victor Green had a nice statistics day, at least 17 carries. He had 101 yards rushing to break the century mark. You know, it's hard to contain those Cougars, but they only put 14 points on the board, and you know that King George defensive scheme maybe has identified something here that others might be looking to exploit.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at what Courtland does, and you have Victor Green and Blair Lawson, like you said, running to the outside. Last year they had Anton Jenkins, a big, powerful guy running in the middle, and you couldn't really sleep on that. This year they have George Cheatham, who's a lot smaller than Jenkins. I don't think he's quite the threat Jenkins was running inside, so I don't know if Courtland might want to do something there. They have a guy, Jason Hokerson, who is that big bruising back that gets some carries, but not as much. I don't know if they're going to adjust anything going forward.
Interesting game coming up for Courtland. They are 6-2 on the season. We will preview their game against James Monroe a little bit later. King George also has an interesting matchup against Chancellor. These 4A matchups are going to be very interesting as we enter the home stretch here. But how about King George, the Foxes, with the 19-14 victory over the Cougars? 6A South matchup between Colonial Forge and Woodbridge. Forge sitting atop the Conference 3-4 6A South half of that bracket. It's always a little bit confusing the way that works out. The top 8 teams in the Conference 3 and Conference 4 make the playoffs. Forge currently ranked number 1, and they continue to roll a 30-18 victory over Woodbridge. A couple of nice rushing performances. Antonio McCrae with 88 yards rushing and 2 scores. Rohan Martin 62 yards, but 2 more scores for the Eagles. This team just continues to roll. They rack up the wins. Yeah, they're continuing to roll and continuing to do what they do. They seem to control and dictate the tempo of every game they play. They get ahead with their running game, take a few chances with the passing game, but not very many. But the formula seems to be successful right now. They're not the most, I guess, awe-inspiring team right now, even though they're 8-1, but they're continuing to get it done. So kudos to them. Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking the same thing as you were saying that. This probably will come across wrong, but it's almost boring. I mean, it continues. Forge continues to win. They continue to win with the same model. It's not a whole lot of they've had some good statistical performances. Certainly have a lot of good talent on this team. But it's the same story every week, it seems like, including the final result, which is a Colonial Forge victory. So I mean that in a very positive sense. Forge just, another week, another win for Forge. So they certainly are rolling into the postseason. I think that they have a stranglehold on the number 1 seed, I believe, in that half. Yeah. They clearly are well positioned for some home games. And yes, and I think they're a team that could do some damage in the playoffs. Yeah,
Yeah,
they have recent experience there, so
Yeah.
if that says anything, then you'd have to like their chances.
Yeah.
Colonial Forge 30 to 18 victor over Woodbridge. James Monroe and Spotsylvania renewed a long-running rivalry. These 3A East rivals matching up at JM. The Yellow Jackets holding on to a 12-7 lead going into the fourth quarter. They blow it out in the fourth quarter, come away with a 33-7 victory. This game was much closer than that final score would indicate, though, Taft.
Yes, that's a major credit to Spotsylvania and the job that first-year head coach Al Johnson is doing over there. As Serbay told Justin Rice after the game, somebody should pat Coach Johnson on the back. Their Spotsylvania team has traditionally struggled the last several years, and for them to be right there with the 6-2 JM team is something to be said for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. I like that quote. Certainly high praise coming from Coach Serbay as well. James Monroe, a very strong team. So kudos to Spotsylvania for hanging tough there until the fourth quarter. But a big fourth quarter it was for the Yellow Jackets. Let's get through some of the offensive stats there for JM. DJ Weldon led the way on the ground, 14 carries, 107 yards and 2 scores. AJ Felton, the quarterback for JM, he had 3 touchdowns passing. He also carried it 8 times for 60 yards. Darius Leacock with 2 receptions, 110 yards. You'd have to wonder, if the field were longer, how many yards could he have racked up there? Matt Felton with 2 touchdowns. Both of the passes he caught went for touchdowns and 42 yards through the air, receiving-wise, for Matt Felton there. But the Spotsylvania team hung tough. Again, I feel like I've been saying that a couple of times now, but I have been impressed with the fight, with the heart that this Spotsylvania team has displayed.
Yeah, and they're more than just heart and fight and grit and all that good stuff. They have some talent as well.
Yeah.
I saw them play against Washington and Lee. I mean, you look at guys like Michael Shelton. He's a bruiser, 21 rushes, 89 yards. Reese Ricabo, 12 carries, 62 yards. He had a game earlier this year where he ran for over 230 yards.
Yeah.
So they have something to work with. Michael Gunalo also 14 carries, 50 yards, and a touchdown in this game. So they have a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but they have something to build on for next year going forward. I believe the JV team is doing pretty decently. So I wouldn't be surprised in the next year or two you see a resurgence down there.
How nice would that be? It's been a while since we've seen a strong Spotsylvania team. It would be nice to be able to see that wing team offense they've adopted, and that's starting to pay some dividends already. So it would certainly be encouraging. It would be a feel-good story to see Spotsy get back on the winning side of things. They are 2-6 at this point. Likely will make the playoffs, by the way. Justin tells me, he's whispering in my ear that they are probably a playoff team. So they've got that to look forward to. Meanwhile, James Monroe continues to roll, though. So they had their big victory last week over Chancellor. They get this victory this week. Was maybe a trap game potentially because they've got Courtland coming up next week. A strong team, though. Yeah,
but I think I said earlier they were 6-2. I believe JM, have they won 7 in a row now since that season opened and lost to Dinwiddie? I believe they have.
You might be right. You might be right. We'll check on that. I think maybe James Monroe 7-1 on the season.
7-1 on the season. So
right,
they're rolling and peaking at the right time.
Yeah, definitely. JM 33, Spotsy 7. Matchup of Stafford County 5A North teams, Brooke Point and Stafford. Brooke Point potentially with a letdown coming off a big win last week over Mountain View. They get the job done, however, 57-7 victory over Stafford. How about these Blackhawks?
Yes, 7-1 right now on a 7-game winning streak. They are absolutely rolling. Damone Drew, Brock Carnes, all those guys, they're absolutely getting it done right now.
And so they lost their opening game of the season to Colonial Forge, but that was a nail-biter. They lost by 3 in that game, and they were in it till the end.
Yeah.
So that's a very, very strong team. Outstanding performance here this week against Stafford. Damone Drew, 26 carries, 152 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground. Brock Carnes, very efficient, 14 of 20 passing the ball, 3 scores, 215 yards passing. 2 of those went to Jamal Fisher. This is, almost scrimmage here for this one. Stafford has not been the season that they wanted to have, but Brooke Point just continues to rack up the points. Yeah,
Damone Drew, like you said, he's been spectacular all year, and I think Brock Carnes, it seems like he's 14 of 20 every single week. I think that's been his completion and attempt percentage for the last 3 weeks. So.
Quite efficient, quite effective, no doubt, no doubt. This team has has got a formula down that has proven to be quite effective thus far. So kudos to Brooke Points with the 57-7 victory over Stafford. Let's take a quick cruise around the area to review other games from this past week, starting with Louisa, a 27-7 victory over Monticello. Job Whalen with another good game, 24 carries, 130 yards, and a touchdown rushing. Raekwon Jones also with 98 yards on the ground for Louisa in that game. How about Eastern View? They get a 47-20 victory over what I think is a pretty strong team in Liberty Bealton. Justin Pollard and Josh Stallings with another big game for the Cyclones.
Yeah, Justin Pollard, 113 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, a TD receiving. Montrez Orange also with 12 carries for 107 yards. And Josh Stallings doing what he normally does, effective as a runner and a passer. 3 touchdowns rushing and also a TD passing.
North Stafford with a 30-15 victory over Potomac. The North Stafford Wolverines continue to roll there. How about Chancellor? A big 61-0 victory over Caroline. They get back on the winning side of the column with authority there.
Yeah, rough week for Chancellor. A couple of weeks ago they played Courtland and JM in the same week and took their lumps. So they come back and I guess they took it out on the Cavaliers. Mario Wisdom with 251 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Wisdom is now up over 1,000 yards for the season. Awesome. Jason Brown with 4 passing touchdowns, I should say.
And a rushing touchdown as well. Accounted
touchdown
for 5 there.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive performance there from Chancellor. Colonial Beach with a victory, 26-21 over Northumberland. Riverbend with a victory, 44-20 over Garfield. I believe this is, so they're 4-5 on the season now. Probably gets them, secures them a bid in the 6A South playoffs, Conference 3 and 4. So congratulations to them. I don't know that it may be premature to call that. Jordan DeMarco with a nice day, 3 touchdown passes. I think he topped 250 yards passing for the Bears. Culpeper with a 35-21 win over Manassas Park. And Orange with a victory as well, 27-20 over Charlottesville. Week 10 certainly looks intriguing on the schedule for Fredericksburg area high school football. Taft, I think that this battle of old rivals, Courtland and James Monroe, is the one that is most intriguing to me. James Monroe, 7-1 on the year. Courtland, 6-2, looking to rebound from their loss at King George. This really should be a very intriguing game. I'm anxious to see how this one plays out.
Yeah, so am I. If you had asked me about this game probably 2 weeks ago, I would have had no problem saying Courtland was going to take this one. But now you look at what's happened, what's transpired over the last couple of weeks with JM proving itself in a hard-fought win over Chancellor and King George still in the game against Courtland last week with the Cougars kind of taking it on the chin in that 19-14 loss. So now this game is full of intrigue. I mean, you don't know what might happen.
Changes the complexion of it, and in a way it may change the ramifications of the outcome. So both of these teams are still playoff teams, there's no doubt about that. What would this do though to Courtland if they lose? This is a very losable game if you follow my logic here. This is going to be a tough game for them. Losing 2 in a row near the end of the season here, that is not a typical occurrence for the Cougars.
No, they usually take their lumps early when they've traditionally had tough games early on against Massapequa and Riverbend and then just rolled through the rest of the regular season. But this season with King George coming in there at the end and clipping them, it's kind of a different trajectory for them going into this last part of the year. So it'll be very interesting to see how they respond to this to that loss to King George.
Meanwhile, how about JM? So they got that victory over Chancellor, maybe surprised a couple of people. Very strong team at JM, no doubt. It wouldn't have been a very big upset there. But another challenging matchup for them against Courtland. They have fared quite well against teams that feel like they should be really testing their mettle against.
Yeah, I mean, Courtland is a big physical team, and they also have a lot of speed. You know, we talked earlier about some of the outside runners they have, but JM has the athleticism, I think, and the speed defensively to stick with them. So it should be a very interesting game.
And it's not the only interesting game from around the area. How about Massapequa and North Stafford? Ponix puts their 31 consecutive win regular season streak. I said that a little bit backwards, but you know what I'm trying to say here. They put it on the line at North Stafford. This is a challenging team. North Stafford has beaten Ponix in the playoffs 2 years ago by my recollection. not a team to be taken lightly here. Pontiac's streak may be in jeopardy.
Not a team to be taken lightly at all, and I'm sure Eric Ludden is drilling that to his team all week. Massapequa, to win 31 games in a row, you have to have that one game at a time mindset. And I talked to them last week, and they said they get excited every week because they look at every week as a Super Bowl. So I'm sure they're not taking North Stafford lightly. I'm sure they have their game plan down packed. They're going to do what they do offensively. The question will be, just like with Mountain View, if North Stafford is able to match Massapequa physically.
Physicality, sure. This is a game that always intrigues me because of the master tacticians, as it were, that are coaching on each sideline. So you've got Coach Ludden on one side, Coach Mangano on another. You know that there's going to be some scheming going on there. It'd be interesting to see how that one plays out. But that's not the only big game around the area. We've also got Chancellor taking on a resurgent King George team. They're coming off a big victory over Courtland. Can they do it 2 weeks in a row and beat Chancellor at home again for King George?
Yeah, another big game for them at home. And just like I said with the JM Courtland game, if you had asked me about this one a couple of weeks ago, I would have had Chancellor winning this one easily. But King George made a major statement last week, and I'm sure that got the attention of Chancellor.
Absolutely, absolutely. Plenty of other great games around the area as well. Hilton will be visiting Riverbend, Stafford, Mountain View, Caroline, Spotsy. Big game between Louisa and Orange as well. And don't forget WL and Essex. I'm so excited I can hardly get it out. Lots of great football, high school football action around the area this coming Friday night. I hope you're able to get out and see one of these wonderful games. Well, that'll be a wrap for another edition of the Varsity 360 Gridiron Report. I have certainly appreciated the time. Hope you've appreciated the information. Always great to be able to talk Fredericksburg area high school sports with Mr. Fredericksburg area high school sports writer himself, Mr. Taft Coghill, the star of the Freelance Star. I appreciate the time, buddy. It's always fun.
You're too kind, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah. My idol here, my idol. This is a busy guy. He's still running around. He's got more work to do tonight. More stories to write, I'm sure. You're always digging up news and information and then sharing it with everyone. So I appreciate everything that Taft does for the area. And I certainly enjoy talking high school sports with him. Hope you've enjoyed it. For the good folks from the Virginia Varsity Sports Network, my name is Mark Coleman. Thanks for watching, everyone.